I've been continuing to work on my Tony Hawk's Underground remaster concept. I've always wanted a cease and desist from Activision. In this video, we're going to take a look at my remastered version of Manhattan, the second level from the game. But before we get into that, we have some unfinished business in Jersey.
Take your soggy mob flips back to Jersey, tweakers.
Where I left off, this starting level was feeling pretty devoid of life, so I wanted to tackle that first. In the original game's New Jersey, there's normally two cars driving around the neighborhood. The first is the Street Warriors tuner car, which I figured was based off of some kind of Honda Civic. After doing some digging, I found a post from the original artist that states that this car was in fact based on a Honda CRX, pretty much a Civic. Luckily, I found a free CRX model on Sketchfab and was able to fix it up a bit. I recreated all of the decals that were on the original car, and now it's starting to look like it belongs to Johnny Turbo.
Come back and kick it anytime, you're a street warrior now.
Now to make it actually drive. Unreal has a vehicle template that feels pretty good and is easy to modify. I'd previously built off it to create my game Slaughter Truck, so I had some familiarity. I was able to swap out the default sports car model, and soon I was driving it around the test track. This is pretty sweet. But this thing has to drive itself around the neighborhood. So, I created a spline that represents the path the vehicle should take. Then, I programmed the car to give itself some throttle and steer itself towards the nearest point on the specified path. Okay, this took a few tries to work. Yo, you okay, Johnny? Then, I added some logic to prevent the car from running into the player, using a box trace to determine if the player is in front of the car and slamming on the brakes if that's the case. I've never had it run into me, so statistically, this AI is already safer than a self-driving Tesla. There's also a cop car that drives around the neighborhood in the other direction, so I added that too. While I was in here, I took the time to update a few assets that I missed before as well, like this AC unit, that one was really bugging me, and these tether balls. Then I realized I forgot to put the knockable ducks in. A glaring omission, I know. So I added them. Finally, I added some puddles. For every comment I found on the last video complaining about the puddles, I added one additional puddle to the level. Now they're just absolutely everywhere. Alright, now let's get this new level into here. I imported Manhattan the exact same way I did New Jersey in the last video. I got it into Blender using a clever plugin someone made, and then got it ready to export using a custom script I made. I actually improved it from the last time. Now it'll carry over transparency information for each material, which basically means things are going to look less broken and give me a better starting point when I bring this into Unreal. But this isn't that important because my goal is to replace all of the materials anyway. So I imported the level, and I had some issues with scale at first, which resulted in a giant Steve, which I thought was pretty fun. Anyway, after getting this level into Unreal, it was time to start making it look better. This level is quite a bit bigger than New Jersey, so I knew this was going to be a process. I start with a cleanup pass, deleting all of the unnecessary geometry that was mostly used to hold fake shadows before. Then it was time to start swapping out assets for higher quality ones. I used some Kitbash 3D assets, in particular their City Streets pack came in handy. I used quite a bit of Quixel Mega Scans as well for things like trees, and there's some happy little trees that live right here. Also a lot of construction related stuff, these manhole covers, and a bunch of other little things. The original had these barrels that you could knock around by the waterfront, and Quixel had the perfect replacements for them. I figured I'd maintain the original game's product placement, so I gave the McDonald's a facelift. At this point, I couldn't resist adding the car system I just made into Manhattan, so I added a cop car, taxi, and a truck and had them drive along the same path as they do in the original game. These vehicles are actually from an asset pack made by Unreal themselves called the City Sample Project. And oh man, are these some high quality assets. You may remember the Matrix Awakens tech demo for Unreal Engine 5 that was released in late 2021. They released a bunch of assets from that demo, so I used those vehicles here. I used a bunch of the buildings from that project too, and they're really high quality and look right at home here in Manhattan. Updating the buildings with high quality assets was probably the most challenging bit of this. Ideally, I had to find buildings that would be drop-in replacements for the existing ones, but with much more detail. I ended up using modular parts from various building packs that I had to piece together new facades for the existing buildings. Something that I really like about these buildings is this cool shader trick they use for the windows. It looks like you can see inside them, like there's a cube map parallax effect going on in there. This was actually really handy to have because I could slap it on existing windows to give the illusion of detail. I used Unreal's water plugin to create the East River, and I think it looks pretty good right out the box. But this place still felt pretty empty, so I decided I had to add pedestrians. I made a simple AI system so they wander around to different specified points on the map. I gave each pedestrian a different list of points so they all have their sort of routine that they randomly follow. I worked this out with the default mannequin model at first, then I figured this would be a good chance to give metahumans a shot, Unreal's solution for creating hyper-realistic character models. So I made one of my own, grabbed a few of the pre-made ones, and I was able to easily retarget them to the mannequin. And now we have some finished pedestrians. As I was looking through the documentation for MetaHuman, I came across this bit about using a 3D scan of a person's head as a reference to create a MetaHuman from. And this gave me an idea. What if instead of a proper 3D scan like they're expecting, I used Steve's original head model with a texture on it and then fed that into this pipeline? Would it produce a usable result? If it does, it would be a great way to replace the current Steve model, which is looking a little bit potato, to be honest. This isn't even the right face. And it turns out, yeah, this totally works. I tracked the facial features of the Steve model and sent it off to the MetaHuman servers. Then this textureless Steve model was available to tweak on the MetaHuman site. So I fixed it up a bit, I picked out the closest haircut and clothing combination that I could to the original, and here we go. I present to you, Steve 2.0. Now, whether or not this actually looks like Steve is up for debate, but I think if you squint enough, it sorta does. Whatever, I'm keeping it. I think it looks awesome. Look at this completely unnecessary amount of detail on the dude's face. And the gameplay would be looking pretty cool right now if the animations weren't so whack. But luckily, Unreal has this system where you can make additive keyframes on top of the existing animations, instead of making entirely new animations from scratch. I was able to use this system to tweak the animations and make them look what I hope is a little bit less awkward. And this is it. This is what the remake currently looks like. Moving forward, each episode of the series is going to focus on remastering a particular level from the game. And on top of that, there's a bunch of other fun things to work on. So stay tuned for more. In the next episode, we'll be visiting Tampa.